Hey everyone, welcome to the channel, All Things Middle Earth here, and very recently I played a new Season 1 server. We joined in Arnor and played, and I learned some new things, or I relearned some things that I learned long ago, and I wanted to share those 5 things with you today. So if you're a brand new player, joining your first, second season, or even if you're a veteran player, these might be helpful things for you to remember to enjoy the game better. So stay tuned, those 5 tips are coming up in just 1 second. All right, the first tip is that the season you start in may look very different from the season you finish in. What I mean by that is the way things look, looking at leaderboards or groups, whatever it is, can very much change over the course of a season. So don't get too overconfident. Don't just think that your team is set, you don't have to do anything. It's a long season. So in this example here, if you look at the map, you can see that Rune has won. They have the ring. I believe they had a deal with Rohan, so they fought for it, if I'm not mistaken. Rune's a very small group, about 40 players, but they came in very coordinated, very organized. A little bit of bigger players than we had on our team. But if you look at a different sheet, like the leaderboard sheet here, you can see that our group is actually still first in power production. So if you look at that solely, it's going to give you a very skewed perception of what the server could end up like. And sometimes the top groups are in top power production. But I just want to make the point that just because you're in the top power production does not always mean you're going to finish first in the server. And again, we were lucky to still have the lands we do have, but this does not dictate who wins the server. In the same way, a group like Erebor was #1 for a lot of the time above us even as we started, and they were the first group to have 100 people. So a lot of people, myself included, thought that they were going to win this server just because they had the most people and were just going right out the gate. They're now down here in 6th place in production, and as you can see, they're hanging onto their capital in 2 lands. So how you start the season will not be how you finish it, potentially. So don't get too confident, don't get too comfortable. Have a good time, and remember, anything can change over the course of a season. The next thing is that seasons are very short term. They're about 2 months. And again, a lot of us have been playing since launch, and we're going into our 10th or 11th season. So seasons are short term in the grand scheme of this game. You got to think of this game like a marathon, and individual seasons are like little sprints that you're doing. So in terms of your respect and your gear, you have to remember that there is more beyond this season. You might be using different commanders. So it's okay to be where you're at currently. Don't be too stressed out in your season if you have lower gear, have enough gold stars or whatever. And in the same way, don't make bad gear decisions that might just benefit you temporarily. There were definitely some temptations on my end to get rid of better gear or better effects because I wanted to power things up sooner, when in reality I might be hurting myself in the long run. Maybe 2-3 seasons down the road, I might be looking for the effect that I got rid of to strengthen something else up that I thought I would like in the short term. So with your gear, with your commander respect, remember it is a long-term thing. So A, don't stress out too much about it, and B, don't make decisions based on just what's happening in the moment in your short-term seasons. Be thinking of the long term of the game. Be thinking about your 10th season and where your commanders and gear could potentially be. And the next tip for your first season, and really any season, but it's one thing I think people don't realize, is do not be memorable in a negative way. In this game, players that play long-term, again, it's like a funnel that goes upwards. So as you play the game, the amount of people playing kind of gets thinner and thinner. And so people remember when you do or say stupid things. Now, it doesn't mean you can't have fun, doesn't mean you can't banter, all that good stuff. I'm always a big fan of that. There's definitely lines, and there's definitely times when people cross the line and it's remembered in a negative way, and that will impact you. So if there is an instance in your server where someone really runs their mouth or says toxic things in world chat or whatever it is, that will be remembered into the next season, and people won't want to work with those teams or those people. So just be aware. I'm not going to call anybody out right now. I'm not going to say anything. There's always going to be those people who make things about them and say things that are just a little bit obscene. But in my experience, in every season I played in, you remember those names. And if you see them in a future season, you're not going to want to work with them, or other people aren't going to work with them. And if that's you, you're just making the experience harder for yourself. So I know people don't like when you talk about, not being toxic, and they're like, oh, try playing a COD lobby. This isn't COD. It's a Lord of the Rings mobile game. And I don't think we all have to be horrible. And honestly, if your standard for treating people as COD lobbies, like, that's a whole different conversation. But just don't be memorable in a negative way. Have fun, banter, make friends. If you beat someone, you can talk some smack, be a little respectful about it. Just don't be that troll who's remembered just for being a troll. The next tip is to do a little research before your season starts. This is for any season, but especially in your first and second season. Do some research before your season starts and before it ends if you can. So what I mean by that is, first of all, going into this season, I had no idea who was going to be in here, what groups are going to be here. And that was the whole point, is that I wanted to go in very blind and just have an experience that wasn't me leading a group, or it wasn't me bringing in hundreds and hundreds of people or whatever it was. It was just, we're going to go in. We did have some people join us, but it wasn't anything that was game changing. So do some research, check out the main Discord, figure out what groups are going to what servers. In season 1, it's a little bit harder, but especially as you're wrapping up in your season 1, you're going to have an option to sign up for either role play or non-role play. So ask around and figure out what people in this server are doing, because maybe you want to play with certain groups, or maybe you don't want to play with certain groups. So figure out what's going on and make sure you choose wisely, because that's going to be your next, season for a couple of months. So you want to make sure you enjoy it as much as possible. So do research when possible. It's going to pay off a lot. Now, the last tip here is about switching teams or factions. Now, I'm not a big fan of just switching all the time just because the going gets rough or because another team's winning. But there is a function, especially in the first couple seasons, while we have factions available, that you can switch the faction that you are with. Now, it is locked after a certain point, so you have a limited amount of time to do so. But the time that I would do this personally is if you join a new season and find yourself in a very inactive faction. I'm talking if you go to the rankings in the fellowship board and you look and you're like, way, way down there, not even on the top, like 15 or 20 or whatever, and you're not going to have an impactful season. Don't be that stubborn lone wolf who's like, no, I'm staying in whatever faction by myself because that's what happened. It doesn't benefit you to do so. So you should join and act. Now, I'm not saying go join the top team. Go join a team that you want to join and play with them. But there are some benefits to winning. If you go to the season store, you can see in season 1, if you do get the winning title, you can buy a Mithril coat, a very, very good piece of gear that you could use seriously into your 10th season. I know people running Mithril coats with tactical maneuvers. It's a fantastic item. And if you get your first one in season 1, that's just going to give you a head start. And likewise, you just get more, of the season points. So you can buy some more of the hammers, which are very much invaluable. You can buy other gold gear in the future. So being on a competitive team does give you an advantage if you're playing long term. Now, again, I'm not saying, hey, as soon as you start losing, join the most active team and just get yourself a free win. I think that's pretty lame. But I do think sometimes people don't even realize you can change factions, or they don't realize that their faction is like the 9th or 10th most active faction. And I think in those cases, it's okay to hop over to another one that has some activity so you can at least compete and have a fun season. And even if you don't win, you're going to have fun. But then if you do compete more, you have a chance of winning. And that does benefit your count in the long run. So don't be afraid to look at the other teams there and see if there's one that they better fit in the situation you're in currently. And that is going to do it for our video on 5 things you should know going into your first season or your second season, or maybe you're going in your 10th. I still think as a veteran player myself, probably 3 or 4 of these things is applicable in any situation and good to remember. They're just good practices. Some of them are more applicable in your first season. So I wanted to post that after I experienced as much as I could a new player experience this time. So let me know what you guys think down below. Are there other things that you learned in your first season that you think others should know so they can have a better experience? Comment those down below. I'd love to hear it. That'll do it for me in this one. And as always, I'll see you guys in a future video.